Okay. Good afternoon, Bridgitte, and welcome to my channel of Hope and Inspiration.
Good morning, Francesca.
How are you today, Bridgitte?
I'm great. I'm great.
Thank you so much for joining me today. I am absolutely delighted to have you as my guest. Today, we're going to be talking about your book, The Gift of Crisis. If you want to show us a picture of a copy, there you go, The Gift of Crisis, an absolute treasure of a book. And how fitting a title, given the difficult year we've all faced from this pandemic. So, Bridgitte, you are you're a wife, a mother, an author, and a writer. What do you want people to know about you?
Okay, in the vein of writer, author, mother, wife, friend, daughter, all of that, everything that I write and everything that I do at the core of it is the intention to bring sincerity and authenticity. The person who interacts with me will tell you pretty much what you see is what you get, and if I write anything, it is clearly something from my heart that I have found to be useful for me in my life that I am putting out to share with people so that it's hopefully useful for them in some way. So anyone that I've interviewed has been someone that I've genuinely wanted to speak to, or any book that I might say, oh, you should look at this book. This was a wonderful read. It was so helpful to me. It's something that has really helped me in some way or another. So at the core is the intention to be sincere and authentic.
Sincere and authentic. That really leads me into what I'd like to say next about your book is in how it's been described. When I've sort of looked around online, I've seen the words that people are using: wonderful, life-changing, courageous, inspiring, and I certainly agree with all of them. And so I wanted to open our conversation, our dialogue today with something that you said in your book. And of course, I'm excited not only to have you as my guest, but you're actually the last interview that I'm doing in a series of 12 for this year, 2020. So that said, what you said in your book that really touched me was, or resonated quite deeply with me, was that I am who I am because crisis came calling. And I want you to talk about this a little bit and explain where was that coming from? Because given the year that we've had in 2020, people have or are going through some sort of deep transformation. There's a lot of change happening. And many face, or many will face, an uncertain future coming up in 2021. There's a lot of things up in the air for a lot of people. So when you say that I am who I am because crisis came calling, like, what did you mean by that?
I mean, there's so much that
I know it's a loaded question, right?
no, I was, there's so much that you could say. It's like, what do you really want to impart? And when you asking the question, so many things were going through my mind. What stood out was, when I would go to the spiritual center as being a part of a spiritual community and listen to the talks, one of the statements that was said often, that at the time when I was going through such a difficult time, I thought, he doesn't know. He doesn't know what he's talking about. Like, he doesn't know where I am. No. The statement was, you will get to a point in your life when you're grateful, when you can be grateful for everything that has happened in your life, because it contributes to who you are and who you are going to become. And that is something that I so thoroughly understand now, about the crisis and the difficult situations, because they really bring about a stripping, if you will,
A
almost
stripping? A
like a
stripping.
pruning, stripping,
Wow.
like, taking away things
Mm,
that you don't need, falling away, like even almost like a purification, if you want to use
mhm.
the word, of bringing so much of the unseen and unacknowledged and rejected parts of yourself to the surface because you're in such a difficult situation, bringing all the grasping and the fear and the doubt and just the save me, please. And so you can really see, what's there. Difficult situations show you who you are.
Mm,
So when you really look at aspects of yourself that you had not looked at before, that is an opportunity for you to choose. Do I want to keep this part of myself? Do I want to choose to believe something different, to put my attention on something different, to be different? Or do I want to keep this aspect of myself? So there's so much that can be revealed to you in the midst of a crisis. And now, while no, I don't want to go through that stuff again. I don't want to experience that stuff again, but I am deeply, deeply grateful for so much that I was able to extract as a result of honestly looking at some of the behaviors that I exhibited during that time and the beliefs that I held on to, unexamined beliefs that I held on to, and unconscious behaviors that I repeatedly participated in, all of that. Like, I'm just so grateful for what I was able to extract from that and not just move over that experience and continue the unconscious living.
right. And you come out of this not just being deeply grateful, but forever changed.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, it seems sometimes when you talk about these experiences, they can seem very esoteric and intangible and even airy fairy. But what I was going to say is one of the aspects of me that I would say was changed, if you will, or really heightened is a sense of compassion.
Okay.
Because I just, because I felt like I was suffering so much, like I have so much more compassion for people who are suffering and much, much less judgment, you know, because it's like there's so many ways and reasons and, like I said, unexamined parts of yourself that can draw these very difficult situations to you because you need the wisdom they engender. And if you are unaware of that, like it's really easy to look at someone and they're lazy, they're not taking care of business. And there could be those aspects, but it's important to just have a sense of compassion for people who are suffering and maybe what they can't see, what they're not in a position to see, what they may not yet be ready to know, and just know that when the time is right for them, whatever they need to be revealed will be revealed. You don't need to be in a place of judgment.
You don't need to be in a place of judgment. Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So coming into that sense of awareness, as you say, I mean, compassion led you there, through your ways of coping and managing the crisis at the time, what you were going through, and coming from that deep sense of being grateful and having that compassion brought you into a sense of awareness that you probably didn't have before. And so I had found that your book was so full of truth and honoring the experiences that, as you said, shaped your life and who you are today. Something else that you said in your book that really struck a chord with me was you say that my nerves lived in flight or fight mode from the endless anxiety that you created. Um, and that was so, it's like hard to hear on the one hand, because many of us, myself included, do that. We create our own anxiousness, but you have to be aware that that's what you're doing also. So what did you mean? Because I think it's important for people to really understand, those that are going through crisis right now, especially that feeling of anxiousness and where it's all coming from. What was that like for you when you were moving through that part of your life?
Well, as far as the anxiousness and how I created that, because there is this, I'm not even sure where it stemmed from, false narrative that, you know, pay attention to your problems. Like somehow worrying helps, somehow worrying will produce some sort of solution or somehow make you feel better.
Mm,
So there was a time when I was really, really, really deep into worrying. Like that's all I did was just worry, like just this constant mental loop, this perpetual unyielding question of how are we going to pay this bill? How
okay.
are we going to get out of this? Like, how are we going to eat today? Like, what am I going to do? Just, I mean, just so unyielding. And so when you're in that state, you know, your body really is in just a constant state of fight or flight. Like you are
Mm,
constantly afraid of something, like everything is a threat. The mailman walking up to the door is a threat. Oh my gosh, he's bringing another bill, Um,
mm,
a gas truck parked outside. Oh my gosh, is he going to turn off our gas? Everything is a threat. Someone asked to stop by, like a family or friend. They're going to see that our cable is turned off. They're going to see that we don't have a lot of food, like just so much. So that is the
mm,
just living in the fight or flight. And if you're in that, there's no solutions that can get through. Your body is too tight. Like
mm.
or
Okay.
you're just too tight. Like there's nothing that could come in. And it really is in the relaxing, which seems completely antithetical to what we have been taught of how to handle a situation. Like you have to relax, like you have to ground yourself, you have to settle a bit so that something new or something different can come in, because you can't solve the problem from the same level of thinking and consciousness that created the problem. Like you have to have space within your body and your mind for just a different, just come in there. Oh, maybe I could look at it this way. Maybe I could do this. Maybe I need to ponder this question instead of that question. So being just so afraid and so fearful, so tight all the time, like I just, like I couldn't relax. I couldn't enjoy myself. Like I didn't really want to go any place because I just wanted to think about the problems. I wasn't really smiling or laughing or anything. It was
Mm,
just said this unyielding question of how and what are we going to do?
right.
So it was when I started to really, I won't say like when I started reading the book that it was just like, oh, meditate, but it was like reading several books, and okay, they're all saying the same thing.
Hmm.
What do they have in common? They're all meditating, like they're all praying, like they're all um, quieting themselves to let something come through. So it was having, I don't know, I guess the wherewithal to just pay attention to that pattern.
Right, right. And I mean, you also said, and I found this, and I'll quote this to be quite interesting in your book, and I think it was more so in the beginning um, of the chapters. You say that life is not always linear, pretty, and clear. Sometimes you have to step outside the box. With this in mind, I continue to meditate. Meditation grew to become the most practical, accessible, and effective way I found to calm myself of the anxiety ridden thoughts that propelled me. And this is exactly what you're speaking to right now in terms of not blocking yourself, but allowing yourself to receive. So emptying your thoughts of all of those fears and feelings that are stopping you from, as you say, enjoying your life and just having a moment to breathe, having a moment to exhale and not worry so much. You went through a tremendous amount of anxiety, and rightly so, because there were multiple things happening in your life at the time. And it was like one thing after the next thing. It was a snowball effect. And it's managing, it's learning to manage and cope with all of that. So I'm wondering why meditation became important to you. It's a big component in your book, where in many of the chapters you talk about the experience of the meditation, but you actually tell us really what came from it, what came from your moment of silence, being still.
Yeah, I just get chill. I just got chills when you said that. So let me just step back. I love that line. I mean, I know it's in my book, but I just love that line. Life is not linear and pretty and
Mhm.
it's so true. Like I still am on the receiving and beneficial end of that line. Like I still am, oh, am I frozen? Can you? Okay. Yeah, I still benefit from that line that life is not linear. It's not always clear. You know, we sometimes want the answers to be A, B, C, D. And as I
Right.
moved through this time period, as I moved through the years, that just became so clear to me. It almost feels like life is just a meandering path, you know, because you can encounter someone or find out about something and think that it means one thing when it means something completely different. You know, you may, oh,
Mm-hmm.
maybe I should do this, go there, talk to that person, find out about this because it's going to lead to this, but it's not always clear like that. And so that's the whole point of having trust and faith, you know, and being willing to surrender because what you think is leading you to something specific may be kind of moving you to meander in a direction to meet a person, to find out more information, to gather more tools to help you uh, be more grounded, to enhance the qualities you have that want to take with you that you want to take with you where you want to go. Like there's just so much at play. So you have to know that you don't always need to be rigid and that you're going to go straight there just like that, that there needs to be room again for more information, more expansive experiences and information to come in. And it has just felt to me. And when I look back on my life and when I read my journal entries and when I look at the experiences that I've had, that it was just not a straight line. Like the ways that I would have predicted that an outcome came about were very often not how the outcome came about. Like as I wrote about how I got my literary agent and how the book came to be, like I didn't plan any of
Mm-hmm.
that, but
Yeah.
it was just almost like following these spiritual breadcrumbs, if you will, that the more trust and the more faith I have and the more that I was willing to surrender to, you know, that inner still voice and intuition and internal guidance and what was coming through the meditation, that it's like, oh yeah, yes, I will do this, I will do that. And it just kind of led me to where I was
Mhm.
in this path that seemed like it was like, so that is what I mean. So even now when there's something that I want to create, I have to keep that in mind. Life is not linear. You know, it just feels like I'm meandering.
You're meandering. We're not walking a straight path. No matter how
Yeah.
much we want to, it would be nice if we could, at least be a little certain about our future and the things that we might like for ourselves and say, okay, this is the path and I'm just going to stay on this path and I'm going to get there. But as you say, it doesn't happen that way. And for some of us, it could take a lifetime to learn all of these things. I think that's why your book is just so full of these nuggets of wisdom that I think are so helpful to learn from. And just if we can explore, yeah, what did you want to say?
Yeah, I just want to jump in.
Yeah, jump in.
You said, I think you just said like it would be nice to know like where we're going or what's going to happen, you know.
I speak for myself. I should
No,
say I'm speaking.
no, I totally agree that there is this part of being human where, you know, there is a perceived, you know, idea of if I know I'm safe, if I know I can control. And
Not so much the control part, but I think if take it back to what you said about the safety aspect.
yeah,
I
if I
think
know
for
I'm safe.
everybody to feel safe, who doesn't want to
Yeah.
feel safe?
Yeah, if I know what's going to happen, if I know the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to feel safe. But just along the lines of like, it would be nice to know where, you know, where this is going, that I'm going to do these things that I say that I'm going to do. So, yes, I do have things that I want to do in my life, experiences that I want to have, situations that I want to create, but I am open to how it comes about.
Mm-hmm.
It may be that, okay, this is also a good example because I always knew that I wanted to write a book, but I never ever planned to write a book about a crisis. I never to
Okay.
do that, you know,
Okay.
and even in the midst of, you know, writing down the journal entries when I would go into meditation and have my quiet traditional meditation and then afterwards post question during a meditative state, write
Mm-hmm.
down what came through. I was
Mm-hmm.
not like, oh yeah, this is the book. Well, I wasn't there, you know, so that's what I mean. Like you can have the end goal of like, I want to have a clinic that helps abused women. I want to, you know, write a series of self-help books. I want to have a line of teaching the Mari method, whatever, but being open to how it comes about, you know, and not planning that these things have to happen in this time frame. This person has to show up, but just being open in what comes, and you can still be where you want to end up, so to speak, and have the
Mm-hmm.
you want to create, but you're open to how it comes about, and also what wants to come through you, because
Right.
clearly this whole gift of a crisis wanted to come through me. I didn't plan that title. I didn't plan the format, but this is what wanted to come through.
Mm.
It was
Wow.
clear to me because it was unfolding in
Yeah.
an unplanned, almost serendipitous way.
Right.
Like
Right.
keep going on this path. Keep going, if that
Right.
makes sense.
Right. And just to add to that, in talking about, we'll talk about some of the chapters now, and let's just start with chapter 1. What really set the stage for what's to come happens in chapter 1, and for me it was like nail biting, right, to learn what you and your family were facing. And what I want to highlight here is the fact that you wrote this chapter 1, correct me if I'm wrong, but you wrote this chapter 8 years after you lost your home. Is that correct?
Let me just think. Maybe it was like, okay, yeah, like 7, 8. Yeah, because the book came out in 2018. And so
Right.
you have to write it, you have months before it comes out. So yeah, it was like 7, 8 years.
7, 8 years. That's
Yeah.
incredible. That's a long time, because I can't imagine what it would have been like to go back and revisit that part of your life after such a long period of time, because there's a lot of emotion that would have come up during that time, as it did when you read it in the chapter. Oh,
Yeah. And also what's just so interesting that I had not really thought about it until you just speaking to you here right now. It's a beautiful.
I found that somewhere. I don't know where I found that little tidbit of information, but I thought I have to ask her. Really, it took like that long, and that's when that first chapter came about, like 8 years later, and specific to what you went through.
Yes, but what is coming up, like has not come up in any of my interviews. It's just coming to mind as I'm talking to you, that it really speaks to how you can really hold on to stuff for
Yeah.
just a really long time, and it could just be just eroding like your sense of emotions on the inside, like when like you're not dealing with it, but it's unresolved. It's like an aspect of unresolved trauma, unresolved emotions around an experience that was very, very challenging. And how
Mm.
think like if you're just not dealing with it, or there's been a span of 7, 8 years, that time heals things, but it's not really the time heals things. Like something needs to happen in that span of time for things to
Right.
become resolved. So,
Right.
so when I sat down to write the chapter, like it, I was very hesitant to start it. Like I told you the last time we spoke, like I waited
Mhm.
until I couldn't go any further in the book to write that chapter. It was just like just this nail biting, like, okay, I'm going to revisit it, like find out, about
Mhm.
myself. But when I finally got rid of all the distractions and sat down, like that was like a one shot. Like I wrote that chapter in one shot. Like I didn't have to go back and, you know, write it like 5 times. Like it just poured
Brought
out.
it out. Mhm.
Such a surprise. It was such a surprise. Like the way things just popped into my head, like, oh, just chow mein. We were having chow mein and he was having like pain in his arm and I thought it was work. Like it just,
Right.
I guess it was just ready to come out, because
Sure.
I told you it was very cathartic. It was
Right.
very, very healing to get that stuff out, and also to come and sit with my husband and really talk about what did you do? Like, you took the boards out, you put the floor in, you did the plumbing. Like we had not done that. So it was just such an emotional and endearing moment for me to see that we had moved past a lot of that difficulty, but I was meditating, I was in
Right.
a spiritual community, so I was doing the inner work to kind of deal with it. But when it came time to write, I just wasn't sure where I was with it. So
Right.
it was it was nail biting for me too. To
And
say.
that is just such a big part of you opening yourself up when you're talking about what you went through, that whole experience of losing your home in chapter one. What would you say to people today and right now facing that devastating loss, whether it's happening to them now or next year or after that, with what you had to go through? What would you say to people right now?
I would say that it's really, the thing about all of this is like, the meditation, the practices, whatever you have, the spiritual tools and spiritual practices, all of this stuff, it's, it sounds very esoteric, but the whole idea is to bring it into the practical, and
Mhm.
how it helps you in times like this. And what I now know, what I didn't know then, is that it really, really is important to be grounded. It really is important to be very settled in your body so that you can
Mm.
respond to these situations, not react in a chaotic, dangerous, unexamined manner, but to respond from a place of calm centeredness, so that
Mm.
your actions have more clarity around them, so that you're more clear about where you are, accepting where you are, accepting what's happening, feeling the feelings of that, not trying to negate it or push it down, or, I don't want to feel afraid, but like feeling the feelings without calming the feelings, because you can feel a little depressed, you can feel scared, but you don't want to just become that for
Mhm.
weeks and months. So when you have a sense of being grounded, the idea is that, you know, it's like a twig or like a tree during a storm. Like the idea of being grounded is that the twigs, the branches, they're moving, without breaking. The idea is to let the situation move you and show you what you need to see, feel what you need to feel, but you're not completely breaking and going off into the deep end of the doubt and depression and the fear. You're
Right.
feeling the experience and you're moving through it with a state of acceptance and calm and surrender and being
Right.
shown what the situation is trying to show you. So that might take a little time. You know, it might not just be, oh, crisis. Oh, yeah, let's surrender. You know, it might be it might take you a little bit. Okay, I'm nervous, I'm unsure, but you feel that, and then you can get to a place of, okay, I'm just going to sit and I'm going to breathe. I'm still here. You know, I have my practices of meditation that calms me. I may go outside and go for a walk that calms me. I might
Mm.
ride. You know, whatever practices that can, I might just go sit at the beach, which I like to do. Whatever that can help you just calm yourself and stay centered, I have found is so, so important because you just feel less frazzled. You feel less agitated and less torn.
Mhm. Right, right. I should tell people that you can talk about sitting at the beach because you are coming to us today from sunny LA, right?
Yeah, and we've done that a lot. And we actually did that with you know, there was the shelter in place where they were saying stay at home, and then the kids were doing homeschooling. And I
Mm,
just started feeling like, okay, I just want to go to the beach. So when they finished their classes early on Wednesday, we had been going to the beach. We said we would do that until, you know, the cold
mm,
season. So it's just been very nice to just go sit in the sand, the warm sand, and
mm.
calming, beautiful aspect of the water. And if that simple act is something that can help you feel more grounded and calm, then do it. It's simple, it's free. Well,
Right,
it's easy because the beach is like 10 minutes away.
right, right.
But it's just
And
an
then
example of, you know, things that you can do.
things that you can do, and just talking about being with your feelings could actually be a whole episode in itself to just be in your feelings, okay?
And
Right?
it does, you know, and I know that, you know, when you're something is at hand that you're not sure that you're going to deal with, that, you know, meditating, these practices can seem like, well, how can they be helpful? But so many times, like when I just go for a walk, it almost feels like the idea is just hovering in the invisible and I just walk through.
Mm.
Oh,
Mhm.
you know, like it'll come to me, the healing aspects of being outside around nature, the sun, the trees, natural things can be
Right.
very helpful, you know, to to help you calm down
Mhm.
and
Mhm.
then decide what actions you're going to take from that point.
And speaking of actions, because within this chapter, and we're still talking about chapter one, is loss. In the same breath, you're speaking about forgiveness, and you're talking about, you know, what you and your husband Dennis actually went through, the loss, and in the same breath, talking about forgiveness. How difficult was that for you and your husband?
The moving towards forgiveness or dealing with the loss?
Well, a little bit of both, really, but let's focus more on the forgiveness, because I think, you know, just
Oh, that
thinking
was
of
hard. Yeah.
what this year has been like for a lot of people, there's going to be not just a lot of loss, but I think people are going to have to learn, not just, it's more than compromise, but to sort of forgive each other, because there's some circumstances that have been put upon people, not knowing you're going to lose a job, which you might lose your house, and all these ripple effects that are going to come out of, let's say, this year. How are you going to go from, okay, we've coped with the loss, where does the forgiveness come in? And that could be forgiveness of self before you can
Oh,
forgive
yeah,
anybody
that's
else,
exactly
right?
that's exactly what I was thinking.
Okay.
Exactly what I was thinking, that there does need to be, or it's pivotal, you know, to forgive yourself because,
Mm.
you know, there can be, you know, why is this happening to us? You know, what did we do wrong? You know, and, you know, or even the negative, the harsh negative self-talk of, you know, I was so stupid to do that. But really you are where you are. Like you you can only perceive and you can only respond from the level of consciousness of where you are.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like you can only do what you can do where you are. So you have to have some kind of self-compassion for yourself, that that's what I knew, for whatever. If you're looking at someone who wronged you, that's what they knew. That's what they did. That's where their consciousness was at that time. So now I have learned more. I know more than I did then. And it's not just about accumulated textbook knowledge, but it's again, it's the experiential aspect of it. Like, I can forgive myself because I know that sitting and worrying and berating myself it's not going to be helpful. And I can also forgive myself because I know it was an experience. It is not a core part of me. It is something that I experienced. Those were choices that we made from the level of fear-based and abandonment and poverty consciousness that I was steeped in at that time.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, we're going to react the way we did because that's where we were. So
Right.
you have to just have the space for compassion and extract the wisdom from the experience. It wasn't a waste of time. It wasn't all futile. It wasn't for nothing. And it also cultivates so much resilience, in you, when you can take something meaningful and substantive from these difficult experiences. So that, and also helps you to forgive yourself.
Right.
And whatever it is that you think you need to forgive, it of course is like, you may think you need to forgive someone else, but it all really is self-forgiveness, because it frees the energy within you. Like if you're holding on to some anger or some resentment or some blame, or you're still perceiving yourself as a victim, the forgiveness helps you to release that energy in your body, that something was done to you.
Forgiveness. It's such an important part of the life experience.
It is.
And moving beyond that and looking, I'm just going to
It
go
really
into
is.
another chapter. I'm going to move forward to chapter 5, where you talk about letting go, because chapter 5, again, so full of what you were experiencing, and at the same time you're talking about letting go. But it must have been so hard for you to endure, as we've been talking about your worries, your fears, your ups, the downs, the anxiety, trying to find a sense of calmness, the experiences, the thought that you had of working below your education, perhaps assistance with perhaps getting food on the table for yourself and your family. And what about healthcare when you're not working? All of these things, you need to cover all of these things. Like you said, where's the next meal going to come from? That push and pull between living life your way and the way you wanted to live your life, and then holding down a regular job, and being questioned, like, why isn't this happening? So at this point in chapter 5, where you're talking about letting go, I was wondering, was this a point in your life where you felt defeated? Because
Oh,
you talk about the
I
fact
had
that
to go back and look and see what was that. What did I write about in chapter? Because I gave a couple of examples, but yes, I remember.
Well, you talked about, here's what you talked about, the fact that you cannot escape what needs to be resolved.
You can't. It'll show up.
It just show up, right?
Different person, different, because wherever you go, there you are.
Yes. And what you ultimately say here is that the harshest judgment was coming from yourself. You say the harshest judgment came from me and my view of myself, which I thought was interesting. With everything that you were going through, everything you were having to let go of in your life as well.
Yeah, it was like gosh, there's two things that come to mind. Let me make a note so I don't forget. There were like there were it almost felt like a like a force, like, the pain pushes until the vision pulls, is, what
Hmm.
spiritual leader of the community that I attended would always say, because it just seemed like I finally just got to like a wall where everything that I tried to do to manipulate the outcomes, that I tried to control, like once I was just like, okay, I'm done. The crisis has won. That was the point when I had started doing some volunteer work, and then I was doing sporadic reception work,
Yeah.
at the center. And I was just like,
Yeah.
I need to get a different position. This is not, and spoke to the office manager, and she was just like, no, sorry, there's nothing. And and like my car, like the battery was dead. So like I had to walk to work. It was just, I just felt, I remember that time, yes, I felt really, really, really defeated. Because it had been a couple years at that point, the loss of the house, the issues, even after we moved, the difficulties with the food and everything. So I remember that day, just like the crisis has totally won. And I
Mhm.
just sat down and just let out so much, because I was like, there's nothing else I can do. I mean, I was in really, really, really like serious surrender at that time. Like I felt just a total shift physically in my body, because I was just like, okay, that's it. Whatever you like, clearly what I was trying to hammer into my reality was just not meant to be, at least not at that time, or not from the way I was trying to bring it about. So when I just kind of really let go, like whatever you want, if if I am just to live in financial disarray for the rest of my life, okay, so be it. And it was at that time that there was an opening, but there was a major internal shift within me.
Right.
And though, like I write in the book, you can't prove that the two were related, I know that they were, because there was a major shift. And then when I went back in, just out of
Mhm.
the blue, she was like, we have an opening. And I was able to get into a different position. So it was that one pivotal moment of letting go. And so I've tried to remember that, even from that moment over the years of, when you're holding like, I want this, like I'm trying, and to just let go. You have to surrender when it's just not happening, when you're just trying
Mhm.
to pound it. And then the harsh aspect of the self-talk, I think you mentioned.
Yep.
Yeah, because you have these ideals about yourself, the way you view yourself, like all of the labels, like
Mhm.
our college graduate, articulate, you know,
And
nice
it
picture, all this,
right.
your
You
hair
should
always
be this way.
done.
You should be that way. You should have this. You should have that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's all coming up.
The you shoulds, the self-imposed labels of, this is the package that I'm supposed to be, like I've done these things, so this is what it was supposed to yield. And it felt like that letting go, and that moment when I actually went down to the Department of Social Services, that was just such a, I mean, just the stripping, like I said, just a stripping away of it. Like I was just so
Right.
vulnerable. But, there's authenticity and vulnerable. And the thing that I thought would have been the second worst, the first being the loss of the house, the second worst thing that could ever happen in life, actually freed up so much of my mental aspect, because then we could eat. So there,
Yeah.
there was so something that I thought was just so bad and so humiliating served even its own purpose. And it also helped me to see how harshly that I was judging myself. And now we're in this situation
Mhm.
where so many people who probably never thought they would have to experience that are experiencing that. And
Mhm.
it really does strip down those aspects of ego, where you're like, I'm better than this, or where you judged people, you thought they were all welfare queens. And you see that when you go down there and see so many people that look like you, and people that look like your parents, your neighbors, and it's like, this is not at all what I thought it was.
Yeah. Mhm.
Really strips down aspects of your ego that are
Mhm.
steeped in judgment.
And it was also, I think, a moment for you not just being brave, but courageous to take that step, right? It's one of the hardest things I think you
Yeah,
can
it
do.
was. It
And
was.
courage plays a big part in all of this too.
Yeah, yeah, it does. I mean, that's one level. That's one level of courage, of admitting when you need help,
Mm-hmm.
and taking the help in a public way like that. And then another level of courage that we briefly touched upon last week is to go beyond just talking about these things and reading about them, and really employ them in your life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And each chapter in the book, so they're all so beautifully written. And what you did in the book's chapters end was a summary, which I thought that was just brilliant. So what was your intention with summarizing? Because that's where we also get to learn how you went through your meditation practice, which I thought was very enlightening.
This was actually a very, very wonderful suggestion from my literary agent, Priya
Hmm.
Swami of Lotus Lane Literary, because we were dealing with such esoteric themes and
Okay.
concepts, and it just had to be brought down into the practical for someone who is not perhaps familiar with
Hmm.
this, and actually what it looks like. Because it was surprising to me, even after the book came out, how many emails and comments I got from readers simply asking, how do you meditate? So that was an aspect of the summary, to really bring it into the practical, to make it accessible for people who aren't in this world that I'm in, where I read so much esoteric content. It's
Hmm.
like almost all I read.
Right, right. You also talk about in chapter 8 participating in your life. An interesting statement. Why is that important?
So the first thing that comes up is that, after all of that, I thought that the be all end all would be like, if I just got that job, like I just so wanted to work at the spiritual center, and moving in that direction. I thought, oh, this goes back to the life is not linear and clear, because
Excuse
I
me.
had internal guidance to volunteer there, which led to paid positions. And I thought that that was the ultimate goal. But once I became an employee of the spiritual center, there was so much that so much more that I learned about myself as a result of working there. And also coming to the realization that it was not my end point. It was not the
Okay.
end of the line for me. And I do cover this in the book, that I did try to make myself stay in the accounting position. I did try to kind of force myself, like,
Yep. Yes,
like
you
we've been through
did.
so much. If I could just make myself love
Yeah.
accounting, like maybe I should just go get the certification. But, like I just started to, again, like that gnawing, like I just felt like there was such monotony in it for me. And I just felt like I was just walking just this slow daily death. Like I was just participating in just this death walk. Like this is just not for me, even though I've tried so hard to make it for me. So it was, again, like, even over the years, if I've had this internal prompt, like you should write something, and seeing that it ultimately led to a book, it was really part having the willingness and the courage to participate in what kept trying to come in. Like I was coming home during my
Okay.
doing interviews, and I was writing articles online. So that world was really starting to move. People were starting to reach out to me to write articles and blog posts, and I was getting
Hmm.
interviews very, very easily. So it was really moving. So it's like
Hmm.
straddling two worlds. I was trying to hold on to this because it was safe,
Hmm.
secure, and I totally understand why someone would choose that. And I really liked the people that I worked with, but it wasn't for me. So I finally got to the point, I think by chapter, what, maybe 8, 9 in the book, when it's like, okay, I have to live on my purpose. And that was coming through in the meditation as well. So it's like,
Okay.
what's the point of reading about all this stuff and, doing your meditations and all of this stuff if you're not going to do it, to trust? Like what's the point of it? You can talk about
Right.
faith and intuition and internal guidance, but if you're going to just negate it, then what are we really doing here? So once I really stepped into the participation of that, it becomes louder. It becomes easier to follow those prompts, those spiritual breadcrumbs, if you will, and to trust what's trying to come through, even if you don't really know what the endpoint of what it looks like is. It's much easier for me now because I've
Right.
been in that and for a while. It's
Mhm.
easier, but I'm still a human.
Mhm.
I still have my moments of like, what,
Mhm.
you know,
Mhm.
but I'm just more welcoming to that experience now, and for it to have a strong place in my life.
And I think ultimately you're talking about allowing things to fall into place naturally instead of
Yes.
pushing things up the hill, right? And you know you don't want it to go there anyway, so just allow what should be, right? Naturally.
Well, and the idea is to have a nice balance between being and doing.
Mhm. Mhm.
Because yes, you want to allow, but it doesn't mean that you just sit on your couch and stare at a wall. Like
Right.
taking the inspired action. So you take the inspired action that you're prompted to take, and then you can be with the next step will be revealed to you in the being. Like it will come as you're ready to act upon it. The next step will be revealed. So you have to
Right.
have space for being and doing.
And you also say in chapter 8, you say this: I can let this thing happen by consciously showing up through inspired action,
Mhm.
knowing without needing validation, and realizing I am the magic fairy dust. I love how you just sort of summed it all up.
I
The
love
magic fairy dust,
it.
right?
There's a couple of lines that I just love. Like I really like that because I really felt that. I really, really felt that because when I wrote that, it was such a, I mean, just like a coming out of the cocoon.
Like almost a breakthrough, right? And I'm
Yes,
thinking,
like just a coming
finally,
out. Like you can, your external world is a reflection of your internal world. You know,
right.
and just knowing that you can see chaos and disarray and crisis outside in the world, but you don't have to be that. There's so much we have being sovereign beings with the option of free will. You can choose where you are going to place your attention and your energy and your
Mhm.
efforts. And I don't have to place all of my attention on the problems and that there's chaos over there. I can be aware of it,
Mhm.
being in this world, but I don't have to live in that. And so
Right.
it was just, I, I love that so much. Like,
I love it. The fairy dust for me was like a glimmer of hope. You finally
yes,
found the hope, that hope and inspiration, like you were lighting up. So it was such
yes,
a
it was all that.
it was a beautiful moment. And like I said, it comes pretty late. That was chapter 8. And then when I'm in chapter 9, and as I'm going through it, you're really finishing the book where you're talking about living with purpose. And
Oh,
I want to know, why is that so important, especially today, and where we all are, where we all find ourselves today?
I mean, that to me feels like it just feels really, really, really important to me. And it doesn't, let me just first say there, when you hear people talking about like, what is my purpose? There is a lot of commercialization placed around that. Like my purpose needs to be that, I work with the homeless people and I make a certain amount of money. Purpose is not always equated with the professional work that you're doing in the world. It could definitely be an expression of it. But for me, living on purpose, one aspect of that is speaking from my heart, speaking sincerely and authentically, that is really, really, it's strong for me. Like it's just come up so many times. And one of the ways that I can do or express that is through writing. I don't have to do it,
Right.
but it's an avenue to do that, you know. And then also when I wasn't doing that, I felt like I was really just steeped in self-betrayal.
Mm.
Like I felt like I was just going against so much of what was really my own personal truth. And so living on purpose, it's not just about a professional career, but it's really like what is an act, what is a state of being of integrity for you? Like what do you value?
Okay.
What is the moral compass? Like what is the intention behind or beneath what you're talking about, what you're doing, what you're participating in? What are you consciously trying to bring about? All of that is purpose. Whether it's professional or purpose, it's when you interact with people that you're really being
Mm.
Francesca, like you're really being Bridgitte, like you're not hiding so much. And I know that that's not always the easiest thing to do, because sometimes when you show yourself, you're attacked in this world. But I think that we're all in this time period, this period, this 2020 clear vision, behind,
Mm-hmm.
and for many people, the ascension, where you are really this is the time to really pull the layers back, to pull the covers back, to see what is going to be your purpose from this point forward. Your
Mm-hmm.
in your own life, with your family, professionally, and taking action to move in that direction. So it just encompasses so much.
It does. It does encompass a lot. And honestly, I can't believe this is all we have time for today, Bridgitte, but I could talk about this for so much longer. This wonderful book, The Gift of Crisis, it is to me, it's an absolute treasure. There is something in there for everybody to learn from, something to share. And I just can't thank you enough for your time. Bridgitte, if people did want to connect with you on social media, where can they reach out to you? Like, where do you hang out the most?
Well, there's my website, bjbuckley.com, and there is a Gift of Crisis Facebook page. I'm not
Okay.
on there very much. I do
You're
post.
not? Okay.
I post sporadically, but I'm not on.
Okay.
I'm not on there a lot. But I do have a page where, obviously I'll share this interview and some blog posts that I do. But
Okay.
it's that. But there's a lot on my website, and then of course there's a blog on Medium. Some of the interviews and articles on Medium are also on my website.
Okay. Okay. So your website, and as you said, you do have the Facebook page, even though you're not there a lot, you're there from time to time, and you're posting
Yeah, like I
articles as
think I
well.
posted like twice this week.
Oh, well, that's good. Twice is
Yeah,
good.
yeah. So it's not like every other month you'll hear from me, but some
Okay.
people are there hourly. That's not me.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, again, thank you so much. It has been a pleasure speaking with you today. I'm looking forward to your next book. When is it coming?
Oh my gosh. I don't know. I was thinking for another interview that I had, I told them when the shelter in place hit, like I just felt such a strong desire or I felt so compelled to just really go back to writing in my journal for myself. And it was just like this, oh my gosh, like that's exactly what I did like before. I don't know if this, sometimes it's so obvious, but it's not. So I don't know if I'm in the beginning of another book, but it's always like in the back of my mind, like
We're looking forward to
filing.
whatever else you have to share with us. We will keep in touch via your website and your Facebook page as well. And to our listeners, if you do have enjoyed our conversation today, remember to like and share this video. Again, Bridgitte, thank you so much. And
Thank you,
until next
Francesca.
time, bye for now.
Bye. Thank you.